Across the vast landscapes of ancient America, from the tundras of the Arctic to the jungles of Mesoamerica, from the river valleys of the southeast to the canyons of the southwest, cultures thrived, each with their own laws, hierarchies, rituals, and myths. And yet threaded through nearly all of them, a peculiar and persistent figure appears again and again. One who mocks the sacred, one who dances backward into the fire, one who speaks lies to expose the truth. This is the trickster, neither hero nor villain, neither human nor beast, often both. The trickster is paradox embodied. And more than that, he is political. In the councils of leaders, on the lips of storytellers, in the margins of law and ceremony, the trickster functioned as a sacred disruptor. He broke rules to uphold the law. He laughed in sacred space, not to profane it, but to keep it humble. Tonight, we journey deep into the role of tricksters in political myth and justice, uncovering how indigenous peoples of ancient America used laughter, inversion, and paradox to keep their societies just, flexible, and awake. Because sometimes, the only way to reveal the truth is through a lie. Long before Europeans spoke of jesters, cynics, and satirists, native societies had already woven the trickster deeply into their cosmology. In fact, tricksters weren't just figures of amusement. They were essential to the structure of the universe. In Lakota myth, Iktomi the spider spins webs of deception not to harm, but to educate. In the Pacific Northwest, Raven brings light to a darkened world, not out of charity, but for personal gain, only to accidentally benefit all creation. In Aztec stories, Huehuecóyotl, the old coyote, dances in royal courts, shifts shape, mocks gods, and survives. Always survives. These aren't isolated characters. They form a cohesive pattern across the continent. The Algonquian Nanabojo, the Cree Wisakijak, the Pueblo clowns, the Maya monkey twins, the Andean fox, all serve similar narrative functions. They break boundaries between animal and human, sacred and profane, male and female, order and chaos. But why? Because tricksters challenge fixedness. And in political life, what is more dangerous than rigidity? Ancient political structures in America, from the complex city-states of the Maya to the egalitarian councils of the Iroquois, recognized the dangers of stagnation. Through oral storytelling, the trickster became a dynamic force, one who could say what others could not. He became the sanctioned outsider, a joker who told dangerous truths under the veil of absurdity. In this way, the trickster was more than myth. He was a mechanism of governance. What happens when the weak win? When a lie reveals a truth? When a sacred ceremony is interrupted by flatulence and laughter? To the trickster, these aren't taboos. They are tools. Across indigenous America, the path to justice was not paved solely by rules. It was sculpted by paradox. Among the Hopi, Zuni, and other Pueblo peoples, sacred clowns, often called koshari, tsuku, or chifonetti, appear in ritual. They enter sacred plazas during solemn ceremonies, acting in ways that seem profane. They wear masks with wide grins, paint their bodies in stripes, mimic human foolishness, and engage in exaggerated, sometimes lewd, behavior. But beneath the comedy lies sacred function. These clowns are not random fools. They are trained, initiated members of society. Their job is to disrupt, to invert, to reveal hypocrisy. If a ceremony becomes too rigid, too self-important, the clowns break it open. So the community remembers that the sacred is not about spectacle, but sincerity. Among the Lakota and other plains peoples, the Huehuecóyotl clown does something similar, but on a deeper level of contradiction. The Huehuecóyotl rides horses backward, says cold when it's hot, and laughs at death. But this inversion isn't mere play. It reflects the Lakota worldview, where balance emerges from duality. The Huehuecóyotl embodies thunder, irony, humility, and clarity. In their behavior, they ask society, what are you refusing to see? What truth hides beneath your norms? And that same principle extends to justice. In ancient councils, when disputes arose, direct accusation could be dangerous or disrespectful. But through trickster tales, told with laughter, wrapped in metaphor, people could point to corruption, selfishness, or failure without open conflict. A story about Coyote stealing food from a foolish bear might be a veiled warning to a greedy chief. A tale of Raven outsmarting a stingy village elder could function as social feedback. This was political myth as living justice, performed through inversion, protected by absurdity. It's one thing to uphold justice from within. It's another to challenge injustice from the margins. Tricksters did both. In times of social harmony, they acted as correctives, nudging people back into balance. But in times of tyranny, tricksters became tools of resistance. Among the Aztecs, Huehuecóyotl wasn't just a minor deity. He was deeply political. While the state religion emphasized blood sacrifice, military discipline, and cosmic order, Huehuecóyotl danced in rebellion. He was the god of music, eroticism, laughter, and ambiguity. His myths often feature him mocking the gods of war, seducing powerful figures, and escaping punishment through wit. His cult was never central, but it endured, especially among the poor, the entertainers, and even some nobles who sought a release from the rigid order of empire. In the Andes, where Inca authority enforced strict social hierarchies and state planning, fox stories proliferated. The fox, small and clever, often challenges Condor, the symbol of imperial power. He steals, cheats, lies, and somehow survives. These stories, often told in the rural highlands, weren't just folklore. They were subtle critiques of empire. The message was clear. Intelligence can outmaneuver strength. Injustice can be mocked, if not openly fought. And then there's Rabbit, among the Cherokee and other southeastern tribes. Rabbit is not noble. He's not strong. He's not even particularly kind. But he's clever. He escapes traps. He tricks bigger animals. He uses his wits to survive. In times of forced removal, displacement, and cultural suppression, rabbit stories didn't disappear. They adapted. They were passed down to children, told in camps and homes, quietly teaching that power can be resisted, not always by fighting, but by enduring, by laughing, by remembering. In a world without written codes, law was oral. Law was remembered, performed, and retold. And the trickster was part of this legal system. He was not just comic relief, he was a teacher, a boundary tester, a warning sign. In Inuit stories, Raven often gets too greedy. He eats too much, steals too often, and ends up suffering. These stories are moral guides in a harsh environment. Share your food, or your community suffers. Don't hoard, don't lie, or the ice may claim you. Trickster tales are not just about cleverness. They are about consequences. Among the Algonquian peoples, Nanabojo brings laws to the people, but only after breaking every one of them himself. He learns by failure, and those stories become social blueprints. If someone breaks a taboo, there's a Nanabojo story about it. If someone defies the group, the storyteller pulls out a relevant tale. Law was alive, dynamic, embodied. The trickster kept it flexible, relevant, and deeply human. Sacred clowns could even act as legal arbiters. In Pueblo communities, clowns might be the ones to intervene when someone violated communal expectations. Instead of direct punishment, the clown would mock them. Publicly, laughter became correction, humiliation, not imprisonment. And it worked, because it came with love, community, and restoration. This is justice not as retribution, but as reintegration. And in this model, the trickster was judge, jury, and sacred reminder. The trickster doesn't just defy rules of behavior, they defy categories, especially gender. And in many native traditions, this fluidity is not only accepted, it's revered. Coyote in Navajo stories shifts between male and female. In some tales, he gives birth. In others, he marries both men and women. Among the Ojibwe, the cultural hero Nanabojo is often portrayed with shifting gender roles, depending on the teaching. This wasn't confusion, it was flexibility. It taught that identity is more complex than rigid categories. Many indigenous nations recognized two-spirit people, those who embodied both masculine and feminine traits. And often these individuals played spiritual or political roles. They were go-betweens, healers, mediators. In legal matters, two spirits could serve as negotiators. They saw more sides. Their perspective was wide, and that made them ideal for resolving conflict. The trickster embodied this liminality, always in between, always outside the binary. And that position, neither here nor there, made them powerful, because they could question everything, even the foundational norms of law, family, and identity. And when colonial systems came with rigid gender roles, the trickster became a silent protest. Stories persisted underground, told in whispers. A quiet reminder that before the conquest, fluidity was sacred. Colonial powers hated ambiguity. They feared it. European settlers brought courts, prisons, hierarchies, and dogmas. There was no room for clowns who mocked priests, no space for stories where the liar wins. Sacred fools were labeled demonic. Trickster tales were banned in schools. Indigenous storytelling was criminalized. But tricksters don't die. They adapt. In boarding schools, children told coyote stories in secret. In reservations, elders whispered rabbit tales around the fire. In urban ghettos, new tricksters emerged: comedians, playwrights, artists. Gerald Vizenor called the native storyteller a post-Indian trickster, a figure who survives colonial trauma by shape-shifting, mocking, and rewriting the script. Today, the trickster lives in native literature, in powwow performances, in activist protests where satire and irony challenge colonial authority, in courtrooms where native lawyers quote ancient stories to interpret tribal law, in TikTok videos, in protest art, in graffiti. The trickster survives because justice is never finished, because power always needs to be questioned, because laughter is older than fear. Every society needs order, but too much order becomes tyranny. That's where the trickster walks in, laughing, dancing, breaking rules, not to destroy, but to heal. In the ancient Americas, justice was not blind. It was wise. It saw contradiction. It embraced complexity. And it told stories, not just of heroes and laws, but of liars who tell the truth, of fools who bring wisdom, of clowns who restore balance. The trickster is not gone. He is waiting, in your own contradictions, in your laughter at things too sacred to mock, in your questions that seem dangerous to ask. He is the sacred saboteur, the necessary chaos, the mythic lawyer who wears a mask of madness. And in ancient America, he was and still is one of the keepers of justice.